The call came in the middle of a work trip. "I'm divorcing you," Tyler said, his voice cold. "Oh, and I've already sold the apartment." Then he laughed. What he didn't know was this. The apartment was legally mine. And by the time he realized it, I'd already started planning his downfall. I stood frozen in the hallway outside the conference room, my phone still pressed to my ear, fingers clenched so tightly they'd gone pale. Around me, the low hum of voices carried on, unaware that my entire life had just been flipped upside down. Tyler had called me out of nowhere to say he was divorcing me. And then he laughed. He told me he had already sold our apartment. Our apartment, I repeated in my mind, the words bitter on my tongue. The home we had picked out together, renovated together. The place where I had imagined raising a family. The place I had poured my heart and savings into. Apparently, Nicole needed the money more. His new girlfriend. The woman he had chosen to build a future with. Her name felt like poison. But I didn't break. I didn't scream or cry. I smiled into the phone and told him, "Good luck." Then I hung up. Not because I was okay. Because I had already won. Tyler didn't know it, but months ago, during a mortgage refinancing process, I had transferred the deed into my name alone. He signed the paperwork without reading it, just like he always did. He thought he was being clever, cutting me out and walking away with the cash. But he never read the fine print. Back in the conference room, I sat through the rest of the meeting. I nodded when I needed to, even answered a question or two, though my mind was racing the entire time. He thinks he took everything from me. What he really did was hand me the keys to his own downfall. That evening, alone in my hotel room, I called Chloe, my lawyer and my oldest friend. I laid out everything. Calmly. Fact by fact. My voice was steady even as my chest burned. "He sold the apartment," I said. There was a pause on the line. "Wait. He thinks he sold the apartment?" Chloe asked slowly. I could hear the disbelief in her voice. "Yes," I replied. "And he told me he's already using the money to start a new life with Nicole." Chloe laughed. Not out of amusement but sheer incredulity. "Well, then he's about to get hit with one hell of a legal lesson. That sale is completely invalid. You can prove sole ownership. If he's taken any money from the buyer, he's committed fraud." The word fraud tasted surprisingly satisfying. Tyler thought he was 2 steps ahead. But I'd been playing the long game. Quietly. Patiently. And now I was ready to make my move. The next morning, I woke up with clarity I hadn't felt in months. Tyler may have blindsided me, but I wasn't going to let that define me. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine and exposing him for who he really was. My first call was to Chloe. "I'm back," I said as I wheeled my suitcase off the luggage carousel. "What's our next move?" "We've already contacted the buyer," she said, businesslike. They were stunned as expected. And furious. They had no idea Tyler didn't legally own the place. They're willing to cooperate, which helps our case. I smiled. "And Tyler?" "I sent him a formal letter this morning. It outlines the illegality of the sale, confirms your sole ownership, and makes it clear that if he's already touched any funds from the deposit, he's looking at possible fraud charges." I could practically hear his arrogance collapsing through the phone. When I arrived at the apartment, everything looked the same. His jacket tossed over a chair, his keys still hanging by the door. But something had changed. The air felt different. Lighter. Like it belonged to me again. That evening, Tyler stormed in, letter in hand. His face was flushed with rage. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, shaking the papers at me. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No," I said, arms folded. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out a folder from the drawer and handed him a copy of the deed. "After we refinanced, I had the ownership transferred. You signed it. Maybe next time you'll read what you're agreeing to." His face shifted from confusion to disbelief, then into a sneer. "You think you're clever, don't you? You're not going to win. I already made a deal." "The deal is void," I said flatly. "The buyer knows. And if you've spent that deposit, you'll have a bigger mess than just a broken heart to deal with." He tried to argue. He paced. He blustered. But it was like watching a balloon slowly deflate. His usual tricks, anger, intimidation, denial had no effect on me anymore. You can stay here for now, I told him, voice calm. Not because you have a right to, but because I'm giving you the decency of time to pack and figure out where you're going next. But let me be clear, Tyler, this is my home. You're just a guest. And a temporary one. He opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. For the first time he looked unsure. I had him exactly where I wanted him. And I wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, Tyler's fury began to morph into something far less threatening: desperation. At first, he left a string of angry voicemails, each one louder, more frantic than the last. Accusations of betrayal, pleas for forgiveness, empty threats. Then the tone shifted. He started leaving softer messages. I made a mistake, one said. You're going to ruin me, Amelia, said another. Is that what you want? I didn't respond to any of them. Meanwhile, Chloe worked efficiently behind the scenes. The buyer had already backed out of the illegal deal and was considering pursuing damages. Chloe had prepped the divorce papers and was preparing to move forward aggressively. She didn't hesitate. You're in a strong position, she said during one of our calls. He has no leverage. Between the fraud and the voided sale, he'll either cooperate or collapse. Either way, we win. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a team behind me and I was leading it. That weekend, my best friend Lauren came over to help me pack up Tyler's things. We boxed his clothes, gaming gear, old magazines, and the obnoxiously loud ties he thought made him look important. Each item felt like a piece of emotional weight being lifted from my shoulders. How's he taking all this? Lauren asked, holding up a pair of socks with cartoon skulls. He's flailing, I said, laughing softly. He still thinks he can talk his way out of it. Lauren shook her head, tossing the socks into the box. He doesn't deserve your time, your space, or your peace. And she was right. I'd spent years quietly shrinking myself to avoid conflict, accepting his arrogance, downplaying his dismissiveness, always telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. But this was worth it. The final test came sooner than I expected. On Sunday afternoon, I was sitting at the dining table reviewing legal documents when the front door opened and in walked Tyler, with Nicole on his arm. She looked around with smug curiosity, her perfectly styled hair and carefully manufactured smile already assuming ownership. So this is where we're staying? She asked, running her manicured hand along the counter. I stood up slowly, heart pounding but voice steady. No, I said. This is where Tyler was staying. You? You're not staying here at all. Nicole blinked. Excuse me. This apartment is mine. Not his. And definitely not yours. Tyler's face flushed. You can't do this. I took a step forward. I already did. Nicole turned to him sharply. Wait, what is she talking about? Tyler stammered. It's complicated. Oh, it's not, I cut in. He tried to sell a home he didn't own. That's called fraud. And if he doesn't leave by the end of the day, I'll let the courts deal with both of you. Nicole stared at Tyler, her expression hardening. She didn't say another word. She just turned around and walked straight out the door. And just like that, Tyler was finally standing alone. Exactly where he belonged. Tyler stood in the doorway, his face burning red with embarrassment and anger. Nicole's footsteps faded down the hallway, each one sounding like another nail in the coffin he had built for himself. You can't just throw me out, he snapped. This is my home too. I folded my arms and stared at him, unwavering. No, Tyler. It was our home. Now it's mine. You signed the papers. You gave up your claim without even realizing it. That's not my fault. That's your laziness finally catching up with you. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I could see it, the realization settling in. The panic behind his eyes. The first time in our entire relationship that he wasn't in control, and it terrified him. You're being cruel, he muttered. We were together for 6 years. You're right, I replied. We were. Until you decided to throw all of that away with one phone call. You didn't just betray me, Tyler. You tried to ruin me. And now you want sympathy. He slumped onto the edge of the couch, head in his hands. Please, he whispered. Don't do this. I made a mistake. I walked into the kitchen and returned with a manila folder. I set it gently on the coffee table in front of him. You already did. And now it's time to deal with the consequences. He stared at the folder like it was a grenade. What is this? Divorce paperwork. Chloe has already drafted everything. You should sign it before you make things worse for yourself. He stared at me in silence, his face pale. You really hate me that much? He asked. I shook my head.
No, Tyler.
I don't hate you. I don't have the energy for that anymore. I feel sorry for you. You had someone who loved you, a home, a life that we built together. And you threw it away because your ego told you there was something better. He didn't reply. He just sat there, shrinking under the weight of everything he'd lost. I walked to the front door and opened it. You need to leave by the end of the day. Pack your things. Find somewhere else to stay. I'm giving you this one last chance to walk out with some dignity. He stood slowly, grabbing his jacket and the divorce folder. He didn't look at me as he left. The door clicked shut behind him. For the first time in years, the apartment was quiet.
No yelling. No tensión.
No walking on eggshells. Just silence and peace. I turned the lock and leaned against the door. My heart was still pounding, but not from fear. Not from sadness. From release. This was mine now, my space, my story, my future. And nothing, especially not Tyler, would take that away from me again. A month later, my life looked completely different. It wasn't just the apartment, though the space was brighter, calmer, finally a reflection of me. It was everything else too. My thoughts. My habits. The way I carried myself. There was no dramatic transformation. No new haircut or spontaneous vacation. Just quiet, deliberate changes. I read in the mornings again. I cooked meals for one without feeling alone. I bought flowers just because they made me smile. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I was choosing myself every single day. The divorce moved forward smoothly. Chloe handled everything with the same precision and fire she had from the beginning. Tyler didn't fight back. He had nothing left to fight with. You're officially free, Chloe told me one afternoon. He signed everything. It's done. I sat in silence for a moment, letting the words sink in. Free. It felt both heavy and light, like shedding a skin I'd been carrying for years. Like waking up after a long, uneasy sleep. Tyler still tried to reach out. His messages were scattered now, some apologetic, others bitter. One even tried to blame me for giving up too fast. I deleted them without reading more than the first line. I wasn't angry. I just wasn't interested. One evening, while organizing some old papers, I found a photo of us, from the early days. We were smiling. Happy. Or maybe just pretending well. I held it for a while, then placed it gently in a drawer. I didn't need to throw it away. But I wasn't going to display it either. That part of my life existed. It mattered. But it didn't define me anymore. Lauren and I went out for dinner the night the divorce was finalized. A rooftop bar downtown, the city glowing behind us. To your freedom, she said, clinking her glass against mine. And your glow up. I laughed, really laughed. It's not the single life that feels amazing. It's the peace. The quiet. The power of not explaining myself to someone who never really listened. After dinner, I walked home alone. Not lonely, just alone. A difference I had finally learned to appreciate. I curled up on the couch, the one I had chosen, with the blanket I loved and the tea I made exactly how I liked it. No noise. No second-guessing. No more explaining myself to a man who underestimated me until it was too late. I thought about the phone call that started it all. The way he'd laughed when he said he'd already sold the apartment. How sure he was that I'd fall apart. Instead, I had built something stronger. Not just a home. A life. A self. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't just okay. I was whole. Weeks passed. The air felt lighter. The apartment felt warmer. And I felt clearer. The space around me had changed, yes, the furniture, the energy, the absence of tension, but the biggest shift was within me. I no longer walked around bracing for disappointment. I didn't flinch at unexpected phone calls or second-guess my decisions. I trusted myself now. That was the real victory. One Saturday morning, while sorting through old drawers, I found the last official envelope. The finalized divorce decree. My name stood alone on the papers. Clean. Simple. Undeniable. I stared at it for a few minutes, not with sadness, but with something more surprising: peace. This was the document that closed one chapter and opened another, and this time the narrative was entirely mine. Later that day, I placed the decree in a slim folder and filed it away, not under loss, but under freedom. That night I made dinner just for me. Proper meal. Candles lit. Music playing softly in the background. There was no need for celebration. Just presence. Just me finally whole in my own space. Tyler hadn't contacted me again. And honestly, I didn't wonder why. He had become irrelevant. A plot twist that no longer served the story. I started dreaming again. Not the kind that keeps you up at night, but the kind that makes you scribble down ideas over coffee. I was sketching designs for a new space, maybe an eventual move to somewhere even more my own. Not because I needed to escape, but because I wanted to grow. And that was the difference now. I wasn't surviving. I was choosing, creating, curating a life with intention. One evening, I hosted a quiet dinner for a few close friends. We laughed, shared wine, and traded stories like currency. Lauren looked around the apartment, now glowing with warmth and art and small pieces of me. "I still can't believe this is the same place," she said. "It's not," I replied. "Not really." I glanced around the room. The old shadows had lifted. The corners no longer held his energy. The silence didn't echo anymore. It embraced me. When everyone left, I cleaned up slowly, savoring the peace. I lit a candle, poured a cup of tea, and sat on the balcony. The city moved quietly beneath me, unaware of how far I'd come. I thought again about that phone call. The arrogance in his voice. The certainty in his laugh. The way he told me it was over, as if he had the final word. But he didn't. I did. And my final word wasn't revenge. It was reinvention. A few months later, I found myself standing in the center of the apartment, barefoot, coffee in hand, morning sunlight pouring through the windows. There was no trace of Tyler left here. No noise. No shadows. Just peace. The apartment had changed in subtle but powerful ways. Not because of renovations, but because of what it had become. A mirror of who I was now. The woman who once walked on eggshells now walked barefoot, unafraid. The woman who used to shrink herself now filled every room without apology. I had framed exactly one photo from my old life, not of Tyler but of myself, taken on a solo weekend trip right after the divorce was finalized. In the photo, I was standing on a cliffside trail, hair tousled by the wind, laughing into the distance. I remembered that exact moment. I wasn't thinking about him. I wasn't thinking about anyone. Just the sky, the ocean, and the sound of my own breath. That photo sat on my bookshelf now, next to a growing stack of books I finally had time to read, a few travel guides, and a ceramic mug I bought on a whim from a street artist. Freedom, it turns out, didn't arrive with fanfare. It arrived in little things, in drinking coffee slowly, in cooking dinner just the way I like it, in sleeping diagonally across the bed without guilt, in laughter that came from my belly, not from obligation. One afternoon, as I walked through a local bookstore, I ran into someone who used to know both Tyler and me. She looked surprised, maybe by how calm I seemed, or maybe by how alive. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "I can't imagine what you went through." I smiled. "It was hard, but it taught me everything I needed to learn." She paused. "You seem different." I nodded. "I am." Back home, I opened the drawer where I had tucked away that old photo of Tyler and me. I looked at it for a moment, not with regret but with gratitude. That chapter taught me resilience. Taught me what I deserved. What I would never accept again. Then I slid it back into the envelope and returned it to the drawer. It didn't belong on display. But I didn't need to throw it away either. It had a place in the past. That evening, I lit a candle, opened the windows, and wrote down 5 words in my journal. This life is mine now. And it was. No longer about recovery. No longer about him. Just about me. My space. My choices. My future. And this time I wasn't just surviving. I was soaring.